Welcome to an editorial board meeting of the Tennessean with Director of Schools Jesse Register, who has had a very interesting summer and beginning of the school year. And he's here to talk to us about his third way and the other things that are on his mind in terms of how we're working on improving Metro Nashville Public Schools. Right. So Jesse's going to give us a summary of what he wants to talk about, and then we're going to open up for questions. Part of the members of the Tennessean that are here with us are Laura Hollingsworth, our publisher, Michael Cass, who is the local reporter for Nashville, Stephanie Murray, who is our executive editor, Lisa Green, who is our education editor, Maria Deverin, who is our news director. Welcome to this meeting. Jesse, give you a chance to get it started.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for meeting with me today. I've had quite an active week after we made a presentation at the school board meeting Tuesday night, and a lot of questions and good bit of interaction with the community. So I'll give a little bit of a presentation. I'll not give you the whole speech verbatim, but I want to hit a few high points and then would welcome an opportunity for Q&A. I think that's the best way to dig further into what our issues are. In the first place, I want to say that we have a new school board coming on, and just a few weeks ago, the new priority list of the priority schools in the state, the bottom 5% of the schools, and we did not know how we stood in relation to the rest of the state. The number of priority schools that we have in MNPS increased this year, and that's after a 2-year time when we didn't know what the relative ranking was of the different schools in the state. So of course it became very much a matter of urgency when we felt like we were going the wrong way on that list. I do want to put in context though, and I guess this is where I get defensive or proud, if however you want to say it, of the overall change about what's going on in our school district. Overall, we had good accountability data. I'll point out a few things. Metro Nashville was in the state's Achieve category, and as a school district, we are in that Achieves category. We're not in a needs for improvement category in terms of our student achievement. In terms of focus, which measures achievement gaps, 16 different measures. We fell into needs improvement in one of those 16 categories. And I think it's important to note which one it is. It is the achievement gap for Asian students. They are our highest performing subgroup, and we missed making that Achieve standard by 8 students in our school system. It's less than 4% of our total student population, and the demographics of that group has changed significantly over the past 3 years. We have a large refugee population, a lot of folks who don't speak English who've moved in, who are English now, who are Asian now, classified as Asian, who fell into that category and kept our achievement gap at a high rate, or increased our achievement gap, even though 65% of our Asian students are proficient or advanced in this district, highest performing subgroup. All other 16 measures we improved. We met our standards and actually outperformed the state pretty significantly in terms of achievement gap, less achievement gap than the state as a whole. Our district increases in proficiency in this year exceeded statewide results in most areas, including reading, language, arts, math, and science in grades 3 through 8. Our value-added gains, which is growth, ranked in the top 5% of Tennessee districts for reading and math in grades 4 through 8, and high school English 1 and English 2. Our English 2 growth was the highest in the state, highest school district in the state for value-added data. And I've already talked about the achievement gaps, and the reward schools, which are the highest performing in the state for achievement or growth. Our number increased from 12 to 18 this year. Those are charters, magnet schools, and zone schools, schools from all three groups. The area of concern that we have is the increase in the number of low-performing schools that fall into that bottom category, and that's where we're focusing our attention now. Since that report came out, we've pulled together a large group of people in the district, and we've begun talking about a set of strategies to address that now. There is a real sense of urgency to make change this year, not to wait for another year, not to wait for another set of data at the end of next summer, but to address the problems that we see in those areas now. I laid out for the board the other night a goal of having 0 priority schools in 3 years. And so we're going to take a very aggressive strategy that basically has three components to deal with this as we go forward. I talked about the third way approach. I think Governor Bredesen coined that, or actually Tony Blair did years ago in Great Britain. But it's important for us because we hear the pro and con charter, we hear we hear those issues debated, and there's not one answer to this. And I think the one answer is a different way, and that's working cooperatively together to solve some of these problems. And that's the challenge that I'll lay out. A partnership with a very large presence of charters now in the district. 19 schools now, we'll go to 25 next year. Looking at changes that a transition or a turnaround strategy that we can make as a school system is very important because we have great faith in our zone schools and want to promote those circumstances that can make all of our zone schools successful. And then there's a transition plan that we're looking at. We have our board's approved one conversion from a public school, a low-performing school, to a KIPP school. We also have the Achievement School District that we're in communication with now. Chris Barbick, Superintendent of the Achievement School District, and we're discussing a conversion there. The Achievement School District can take what they choose, any of these priority schools. What they've indicated to us is that they will transition one school as we go forward, and we're having a discussion about which one that might be.
And they have one currently.
Have one currently, Brick Church Middle. It is there. When you look at the overall achievement of the Achievement School District in the state, it's not better than our success rate with our priority schools. Brick Church Middle is the most successful of the Achievement School District schools. It's doing very well, and it's a model. And
it's managed by LEAD.
It's managed by LEAD. LEAD, that's the second school that LEAD has managed and has converted, if you will, or in conversion. Cameron Middle School was the first one, and it's successful. Both components of Cameron Middle School are actually reward schools, the component that we run and the component that LEAD runs. So there's a good, there's a successful strategy there that we hope can be replicated in another transition. So a third way. We basically will there are 3 buckets of strategies, if you will, to address the priority schools that we have. The first is really looking at and doubling down, if you will, on turnaround efforts. Our innovation zone has shown success, but not enough and not fast enough. And so we've got to look at, but the basic strategies are pretty important. Good leaders, good teachers, and a support system. What we've got to do is increase that. We've got to approach with those schools that we choose to turn around, first, great leaders, great school leaders, great principals. As I said the other night, You can't turn around a school. You can't have a great school without a great principal. And so our first step in turnaround is to look at leadership, and we're going to examine that now, and we'll make changes now or in the middle of the year, at the end of the year for next year as needed. Let me back up a minute and say that there is no cookie cutter model for the way we're going to address the priority schools. There are 13 of them. We closed one already, Ross. One's not is not a cone school, is really a program, and probably ought not to be on the list, although it's defined that way. Children go there and make a transition and then are assigned to other schools based on their needs. But so there's really not a cookie cutter model. What works at one school will not necessarily work at another school. So we've got to make decisions about where we take the schools that are in priority status. We also have to look beyond just the bottom 5%. And so we're broadening our focus to the bottom 25% of the schools in terms of achievement in MNPS.
Now, does that mean that they're going to become part of your innovation school program, or?
They probably won't be identified as being in the innovation zone.
Right.
But we've got to pay attention to that bottom 25%. Bottom 25% is not good enough. But the other thing we have to realize is that there's a whole cluster of schools in the state that fall just above that 5% category. And one thing that happened to us this year when the new list came out is that Memphis closed 11 priority schools. You know, bottom 5% is a finite number of schools. That pushes others down, if you will, and we think that has had an impact on the number of schools we have. What I don't want to happen is for us to raise the performance level in some schools and have others fall into that category. We want to raise the tide, if you will, so that all are getting better, and a real focus on that bottom 25%, in addition to the priority schools.
How many priority schools did we have before this last one?
We originally had 9. We reduced that to 6, and now we're back up to really 13 now. One we closed. We had 14, and we closed Ross.
Okay.
Let me talk about the three approaches that we're going to take. That first is an aggressive turnaround strategy. We've got to have great leaders. I started here a while ago, sorry for jumping around, but we've got to have great leaders, and we're going to look at leadership in schools. Find the innovative principles to recruit nationally if we need to look at best practice principles in our district, to incentivize getting great leaders in schools that are tough jobs. Then the second component, after we have great leaders, we've got to have great teachers. I'll say that's a two-step process. The great leaders first, and then you've got to be able to recruit great teachers in schools, in 100%. You cannot have inadequately performing teachers in low-performing schools and expect them to turn around. So a real look this year, during the year, at quality of teaching going on in these schools and changing what's necessary to make sure that we're fully staffed with high-performing teachers as we go forward. Great leaders, great teachers, and a support system. And in terms of support system, we've had an Office of Innovation that Alan Coverstone's a terrific leader for this program, but Alan's job's grown so. You know, when I first appointed him, we had 4 charter schools, and we have 19 now, and we're going to 25 next year, plus the innovation zone. One department can't provide the support system that it needs to for that and for the priority schools. So it's all hands on deck. We have a task force of about 20 people from all departments that are pulling together to work on the turnaround strategies. And then the other strategy that we're going to look at in the turnaround effort is to consider consultants or outside help or a turnaround specialist to come in and work with these priority schools, somebody who really has proven to be successful nationally in this turnaround effort. So for some of the priority schools, the decision will be we're going to do everything we can, put the resources in, take the steps necessary to turn around low performance and to get that done very quickly. Then the second strategy that we're putting on the table is the approach of transition and conversion. We have a charter contract with KIPP. We want to find the school that we think will be successful. We want to discuss that with KIPP and talk about a transition. The model that we coined the model that we adopted in Tennessee, or that we started in Tennessee, was a grade level at the time of conversion. Right. That's worked for us twice.
And can you tell us a little bit about, when you look at that process of picking a school, what are the criteria that we as a community look at and evaluate your process?
So first we want to look at the growth trajectory of schools. Are we not being successful? Is progress continuing to go down? What kind of support systems does a school need? What school might fit a KIPP model? And that's a conversation we need to have with KIPP and in evaluating our schools. I'll tell you that the data that we're using, extensive data on all of our low-performing schools, looking at academic and non-academic factors. What's the attendance rate? What's the suspension rate? What's the attendance rate of teachers? What's the achievement rate of students? What's the value added or the growth rate? What other factors in a community contribute to low performance or the possibilities for success? And it's really matching schools with an approach. And we'll find one that we agree with KIPP on that can be successful with a conversion over time. Conversion over time is a grade level at the time. It's co-managed. We manage, in the process that we've used in the past, we manage the upper grades and we phase out a year at the time as another provider takes over. Then the other component there is the transition, and that's identifying a school that the Achievement School District will manage. The same process. You know, that's the process that we've used at Brick Church, and it's proving to be successful. Rough start. Lack of communication there between the district and the Achievement School District, and so that's the conversation that I've had with Chris Barbick about making sure that we coordinate and collaborate on that transition. And my expectation is that they'll convert a middle school. So we'll see as time goes on what that conversion is. And then the last area is the one that we've received a lot of feedback on, and that's the idea of an East Nashville strategy, if you will. And there's some reasons why East Nashville is unique. And let me talk just a little bit about why East Nashville is unique. There are 27 schools in that fairly compact geographic area. I don't know if you can digitally put this up, but here's a map, and I'll be glad to show you. You may have it already digitally. The yellow dots are the schools that are in the bottom 25% in our district, and the red dots are the priority schools, the bottom 5% in the state. We have a very high percentage and concentration of charter schools in this area. I think there are 9 charter schools in this area. And we have excess capacity in the number of seats in this area. We estimate, and we could do a hard count, but but there's really some flexibility in the way we count. But between 2,000 and 3,000 seats are available, excess capacity in this district, grades K through 12.
How does that compare to other districts?
We don't have another district that has that much capacity, extra capacity. We'd come closest in the Whites Creek area and North Nashville area, but this is where there's a heavier concentration of seats available, more schools, and a denser geographic area. So the possibility of consolidating or closing or repurposing is a good possibility in this area if that's a decision that we make. And we might decide to do what Memphis did and simply close and reassign kids to schools that are not low-performing schools.
So in a district like that where you have extra seats available, does that mean the class sizes are smaller in those schools, or are you restricted in terms of class size by the funding formulas?
Right, not necessarily smaller. We have extra resources in some of these schools, and classes tend to be not large, but schools are staffed based on student enrollment. We're talking about excess capacity in buildings, really.
Right. And then what is the student teacher ratio?
It varies from grade to grade. It ranges. Well, some of our schools the classroom ratio is 15 to 1, and it goes up to about 30 to 1 in high school.
Because some of the feedback that we got from readers was, why not invest in smaller student-teacher ratios in the schools that are not as performing as well when you're looking at your East Nashville strategy?
So a district-wide strategy that we're looking at is a weighted student funding formula. We do some of that now. We have schools that are enhanced options that have more funds invested. That goes back to actually the 1998 desegregation plan, I believe. And then we have the Pearl Cone cluster schools where additional resources are put into those based on our court settlement and our pupil assignment plan that was implemented in 2009. What we're looking at now is greater autonomy, greater flexibility for principals to use in determining how they use the funds they have, but also a weighted funding formula that we'll be implementing over the next year, where we weight extra funds for socioeconomically disadvantaged students, for special needs children, for English learners, for a number of several causes warranting the need for additional resources. So that's in the works now. When we look at the East Nashville area specifically, we've got schools there that are successful and schools that are not successful. Our successful schools are magnet schools, zone schools, and charter schools, and generally speaking, the schools that are successful in East Nashville are schools that have choice, that have open enrollment or choice. A number of our zone schools are low performing or in the bottom 25% in East Nashville. So I think we need to incorporate all of that in, and one strategy would be, and I want to talk about a problem that we see. East Nashville has is higher percentage, probably the highest percentage of any region in the county where a very high percentage of the students choose other schools than their zone schools. And so a concern that we have is that we have some schools in East Nashville that are populated with students whose parents do not make other choices, and they become concentrated schools with low socioeconomic status, 100% free and reduced price lunch. They become racially isolated, and there are real challenges with those schools being successful. For those low-performing schools, and with the excess capacity that we have and with the choice that we have, perhaps one approach is, let's go to all choice. Now, I've heard as late as today, well, choice might be your problem. That if everyone went to their neighborhood school, then you wouldn't have this segregation or isolation that you have. And I'm not talking about racial segregation. I'm talking about socioeconomic, the children whose parents do not make other choices for them, who are concentrated in a few schools in the district. Well, maybe we could do one or the other. You know, maybe we could do, this is tongue in cheek, maybe no choice or all choice, and that really doesn't work. You know, so I think that our goal is to look at
the choice cow is out of the barn. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is giving every parent and every child in East Nashville some say in choosing a school that is a performing school, not a school that is a priority school, not a school that is that many consider to be not appropriate for their children. And an approach that we took when we did the zoning plan in 2009 was a no default choice in the Pearl-Cone cluster. We talked to every parent in the Pearl-Cone cluster. We had meetings, we gave parents opportunities, we let them know what their choices were, and the approach would be similar in East Nashville. Let's make sure that every parent has a choice and that they know what their options are. And it's feasible. You know, whether how quickly we can do that remains to be seen. It's not an easy thing to plan, right. But that's an option for us. The goal is to not have schools that are low performing, and so you know, there are other factors that come into play. We don't have a fully baked plan. You know, this was the first conversation, the first presentation to the school board. We are working very hard every week. We're pulling people in to come up with a plan, and I think we'll have a plan before the first of the year. But we do not have all the answers now on what we need to do.
A plan specifically for East Nashville?
Yes.
Okay, that's
well, and priorities. No, a plan for priority schools. Okay. But I think the East Nashville strategy is a component of that. But the planning that we do cannot be limited to East Nashville. We have priority schools outside of East Nashville. Sure. So don't misunderstand. That's just a specific strategy to deal with a unique situation there where we have the conditions that I said existed. So what are we going to do with the other?
We asked readers to send in some questions today, and several of them were specifically about East Nashville. A couple of them, Ruth Carr Stewart was asked it, I think, most eloquently, wondering how you plan to engage the community in East Nashville to talk about the strategy, because there's been so much discussion about that.
So the first piece of the first part of any strategy that's all choice has got to be to engage the community. We're now scheduling, planning. I think we have maybe one next week already scheduled, but we're going to start. We're going to have a series of community meetings. Okay. I'm meeting with all the principals in East Nashville today, and we're going to go out into the communities and seek input. I actually had a meeting with a group of parents this morning. And we expect to do that. That's the next step for us, is to engage the community.
What did you learn in that meeting with the parents this morning?
Well, it was that they're looking for choices of good schools. I mean, it's just the bottom line, you know. And
I mean, choice is a result of just, I don't want to go there, and I don't want my child to go there. So if we didn't have that issue, I mean, a simple statement, obviously, I realize, but are you looking for, how does the choice situation help you, I guess, in terms of managing this?
Well, it gets me to a place where we feel like every child has been given an opportunity to choose and attend a good school. And that's really what we're after. I would like for every child to have an opportunity to choose a school that is considered a good school, that their parents do not feel like they need to avoid or run away from. There's some ground rules that are very important. We have a diversity plan. That plan's very important. We don't want to further segregate or create. I won't use the word segregate. I'll use the word isolate groups of children who might not have choices. We want to give every child and every family a choice, and I think we can develop that over time.
Dr. Register, how did it? What was the effect when you tried this in the Pearl County, as you mentioned?
We had a lot. Every parent made a choice. It was there were several thousand children involved in the area, and I think our default was like 4 or 5 kids that we just couldn't find. I mean, literally 4 or 5 children whose families we couldn't find at that time. So every parent made a choice, and we're several years past that now. The East Nashville, the approach is the same as what happened in the Pearl-Cohn cluster, but the East Nashville corridor is very different. And I want to talk about some features that I think are very important. So just making a choice doesn't change the quality of the schools in the area. And so I think we have to look at, are there schools that need to be closed? Are there schools that we can close and reopen with a different purpose? Can we build K-12 feeder patterns? And I want to use an example. We have a foundation of a great K-12 feeder pattern in East Nashville. It's Dan Mills to Lytton to Stratford High School. It's a STEM pathway. We're spending $20 million on a renovation at Stratford High School. It'll be finished next year. We have a partnership with Vanderbilt with the science department there that's outstanding. It's one of the best kept secrets in Nashville. And we have people who are beginning to choose that, but overall our enrollment's going down there. The enrollment at Dan Mills is going up. The enrollment at Lytton's going up. So we ought to use that as a foundation for building a very strong K-12 feeder pattern of parents who would like that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics focus for a school. And we ought to build on that. And I'll use another example. A highly sought-after magnet school is East High School, East Middle and High, Paideia School. There are no academic criteria to get in. You get in from the lottery system. What we don't have, and one of the great Paideia schools in the country was in Chattanooga. I had the opportunity to work with it, Chattanooga School for the Arts and Sciences. It's a K-12 pathway. And so with some of the underutilized elementary schools in East Nashville, and there are several of them right around East, let's think about starting a K-12 pathway for Paideia, for the Paideia School, and increasing the capacity for a school that's in demand and for a program that's in demand. And so I think there's some very creative approaches that we can use, not just to leave the schools the same as they are and leave them in place and expect people to choose differently, but to constructively look at what, if any, should we close? What are themes or pathways that we can develop that will attract parents through choice and giving those opportunities so that 100% of the children in that area can make a choice. One of the problems that we have in low-performing schools is mobility. And there's been a lot of talk over the last year or so, or 2 years, about mobility. Well, let's don't that's
mobility. What does that
okay,
mean?
Mobility
Getting to
means
school?
No. Sorry. I know you'll pull me back on task here. Mobility means children who move during the school year. That's what we're talking. Mobility rate. How many children move during the school year? Right. And you can look at all the research, and it'll tell you the more times a child moves, the less likely they are to be successful in school, particularly during the same school year. Right. We have some schools where over 50% of the children move during the school year, and a very high percentage move more than one time during a school year. A lot of those children live in East Nashville. So mobility rate's a real problem in the area. This area is compact enough for us to rethink transportation. I want to, our chief academic officer, Jay Steele, lives in East Nashville, and he talks about a bus stop down at the end of his street. It's a bus stop that has 6 buses stop every morning and every afternoon, going to 6 different schools. We have a transportation consultant we're working with now to look at a way to restructure how transportation works. Maybe we need 2 bus stops, with each bus stopping at 3 schools after it picks the kids up. And we need to, and so I think there's some real possibilities for putting in the East Corridor a transportation system that would allow a child to ride to any school in that zone. There's another important factor to consider here. The charter schools in East Nashville are prevalent. There are a lot of them, and in terms of test scores, they're very successful. I met with the charter providers last night, and I suggested that they be a part of this. In fact, I don't think we can do it if they don't open their doors the same way. Let's avoid this issue of do they take the best kids? We don't have good kids and bad kids. We got kids, and they're all important. And so let's develop a way that we can partner with them to look at the overall capacity that we have and give children choices in those seats too. And they do that. They have a lottery system. That's the way they pick their students. That's not a negative comment. But let's figure out a way to look at increasing the opportunity for choice, the seats that are available, and reducing the seats that are in schools that are priority schools or low-performing schools. That's the concept. Had a lot of questions. They had a lot of questions, and of course that's a very complicated planning process. And what they did say and what we've agreed to is to work together on that to see if there's a way to do that. For example, a common lottery system, and we've already begun a number of efforts. We have a number of strategies where we're working closely with the charter schools on making choice available in our district. Our overall percentage is about 25% of all of our students are in a choice school anyway, district-wide.
Do you feel like as you close some of those schools, you have enough capacity at the other facilities to have all of the children have those choices, or will you have to go to a lottery system as well at some of those schools? If
we carefully plan it, we would hope that we would serve first or second choice for everybody in the district. Will some schools close out? Yes. Dan Mills is full. Laughlin is full. East High School is full right now. But so so the goal is not to just use the capacity that we have for high-performing seats now, but to increase those seats. And I think that when we look at repurposing some of these schools, that's an important part of this overall plan. When we look at adding a Padilla Elementary School or 2, or when we look at adding a STEM elementary school to feed into a pipeline to a STEM high school, that increases the number of quality seats in our district. And I think, I've done 3 school system mergers in my career. And one of the things you want to do is to try to eliminate extremely high concentrations of high poverty and high need. If we can give children opportunities in those areas to be more integrated into the mainstream and to be in schools where there is greater community support and parental engagement, then they fare well and the schools fare well too. And so that's a part of it.
Can you also illuminate, when you talk about changing out leadership, changing out teachers, what does that look like 6 months to a year from now for the families trying to make those choices? If they're making choices based on the current leadership or future leadership that's unknown, can you talk about your timeline for that?
So what's a little bit awkward for us this year is that our first choice festival is just in a few weeks. And we're back on the East Nashville strategy again now. And so there may need to be a supplemental. We will not change the rules on parents and not give them another opportunity to make choices. And we have the capacity for doing that. So parents should feel very comfortable about making choices based on what's available now. But if we do something new or different for that group of parents, we'll give them an opportunity to come back and make a different choice.
That's been a question out there for the
Yeah.
last 2 days as
Yeah,
well. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Register. Dr. Register, clearly the mobility that you talked about on the part of the students is something that the district can't control. But I have heard concerns recently about essentially mobility of teachers. Oh, you'll do 6th grade this year, but next year you're going to have to do 8th grade. Well, now the next year you're going to be reassigned to teach 5th grade or whatever. And how this can also be disruptive. And to me, it speaks to kind of a larger issue of how do we keep some stability on the part of the system during a time when we're going through a whole lot of change, because we know that instability is not good for
Right.
kids learning.
Well, you want to have stability at the school leadership level. You want to have good principals who stay, but they have to be good. And then we need to give them the autonomy to choose their staff and to keep their staff. Good teachers stay where there are good leaders, and good teachers congregate, if you will, in schools that have good leadership. And so that's the basic foundation there. The better we do with staffing, the less movement there is, and our culture now has to be, if you are dealing with a problem, you own that problem. You don't move it somewhere else. And so our transfer rate is down, significantly down. We don't have nearly as much movement back and forth as we had, except for justifiable reasons. If enrollments go up and down, we have to do that, but we only transfer teachers that are in good standing, and our goal in the priority schools is no teachers that are performing below an adequate standard. And so we have to deal with those. We have the data now to do that, and so every teacher in every priority school that needs improvement is being given worked with to develop a plan of improvement for every teacher. No default on that. We are dealing with leadership now. Our principals, I don't want to be negative about that. So we have some great principals and great school leaders and a lot of good people. But I want to tell you, this turnaround job is tough. And it might not fit the skill set of people that we have in some of those places now. So we have to look at finding those people that can do this. It's not easy to turn. That's the hardest part of it, I think. Probably. It's easy to close a school. It's much harder to turn one around. And so that challenge of having great leaders is our step number one. That's what we're working on now, in addition to this potential zoning plan.
Should have them all reapply for their jobs. It's a lot of fun.
You can give me some advice on that. But our principals all work on one-year contracts, so there's the opportunity every year.
Michael, you had a call.
School board member Will Pinkston sent you a letter today in which he said if closing schools is on the table, let's name them, get rid of the anxiety that all these parents and teachers are over in East Nashville especially are starting to feel. Can you do that today?
No.
Why not?
Well, if I had come with a fully baked plan, I would have probably been criticized for not having input and not having conversations with the school board about this. So I think we've timed it pretty well. And we do want to remove the anxiety for parents, and we're going to do that very quickly. I expect this plan to be fully complete by before the first of the year. The most complex part of it is this choice part. Making decisions about school leadership, making decisions about closing schools is something that can come quicker, but we're not ready to make that decision now. We've got to spend time with this. We've got to talk to communities. We've got to talk to the school board. We've got to show them the data. They have to make those decisions. I can't make those decisions, but we'll do that in short order.
Those are very serious decisions, and they cannot be rushed.
Yeah, yeah.
So did I hear you correctly that by January 1, you will have identified which schools?
We will by January 1, the plan will be fully vetted and proposed and ready to implement. And so you know, there might be stages to it, and that's still to be determined.
How are you going to communicate the communication plan if you're going to engage a very complex set of conversations with the community, with the parents in the corridor? Is there going to be a plan, a communication plan that is available to parents so that they can feel like they're being engaged?
Yeah. The first step is community meetings, and we're getting ready to do that now. We're starting that now. We'll publicize those, and we'll be working, I'm sure, every month with the school board in public meetings, advising them of the steps that are being taken, and have a rollout plan there for media. For
So is a community meeting, is that a meeting at the school where parents are invited? Is that what
Yeah.
you mean by?
Yeah.
Okay.
And engaging other parts of the community too.
The gap from, let's just say, January 1 or whenever the announcement is made through the end of the school year, are you going to be shifting additional resources into those schools to help manage and lead that process? So if you have an underperforming leader and an underperforming group of teachers, those last 6 months of those kids being in those schools aren't a wash?
Absolutely. And my preference would be, if we're changing school leadership, that be done in January. And the reason, well, I don't know. I don't know if we would do that with a closing school or not. But let's talk about turnaround. Let's talk about the need for new leadership. It's a two-step process. Ideally, if we put a new principal in place in January, then that principal has the opportunity to work with the faculty and make decisions about who should go and who should stay. And that decision could be made by the end of the year for implementation next year.
About how many?
And I don't know if that's, you know, so you know, theoretically we could change school leaders now, January 1st into the school year. Teachers that need to be changed or additions that need to be made at the end of the school year for the next year.
I think I was a little more focused on a school that is underperforming and is going to be closed. You don't want those kids to give up because the
Right.
leadership is given up for the last 6 months.
Right.
That's what I was talking about, a gap plan for that, but maybe
Right.
you can just get back to us on that.
Yeah, but absolutely not forgetting those schools that are going to close.
Right.
Pulling out all the stops to
Right.
help as we can.
So those kids don't fall further
Right.
behind.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
During Secretary Duncan's visit, you were speaking about the importance of parental involvement.
Right.
And from our perspective, it looks like that there are troubled schools that seem to have very committed and passionate parents, they certainly, come out of the woodwork when the school seems to be threatened with closure. That happened with Smithson Craighead, which was a charter. It
Right.
seems like it's happening already with Inglewood. So they have this parental involvement, but it's not keeping that school from being low performing. It's not keeping that school from closing. So what are we looking for in parental involvement? What helps and what doesn't?
Well, critical mass of people who get actively involved and who put their children in those schools and who help recruit. We heard it in Secretary's Duncan. That was a PTA, basically a PTA town hall meeting yesterday. And we heard some great parents who had made a commitment to attend and support a school. Homeschool parents at Stratford High School who were very pleased with what they had seen. Their children were in public schools for the first time at Stratford High School, and I said to the mother, sorry I can't remember her name, after the meeting, I said, you are the best recruiter we have. And so we really want to engage parents constructively. We want to engage beyond just parents, also community, but really important to engage parents in supporting a school, in volunteering, in being there, in asking the hard questions, in demanding quality instruction from schools, and we've got to develop a critical mass. And we'll be working on that. We've got a staff of community engagement, family engagement specialists in the district. Not a big staff, but several people who work with community engagement. We're going to focus on these. We're going to focus on recruiting parents to schools, and then helping principals and faculties do a better job of engaging parents and communities. Inglewood, I look forward to meeting with the parents at Inglewood. It's been declining in performance, and there are things that are not working right there, and what we need to do is really look at a plan that will turn that one around, and I think that parental and community engagement is really important there.
2 years ago, when the last priority school designations were made, where did Inglewood sit, and why did it change?
The test scores went down,
Right.
Achievement scores went down, and it was not a priority school the first time. It was an innovation zone.
But I know what caused it. The test
Yeah.
scores went, but why?
Yeah.
I mean, what is it about Inglewood that's changed? We have clearly some engaged parents, and do we know why?
Well, the enrollment's gone down. Even though there's a base of support there, a lot of people have moved away,
Right.
have left, and so enrollment's gone down, and test scores have gone down, and we're still analyzing. We're still analyzing what's going on at Inglewood, and we're still making decisions about what ought to be done to turn that around.
Is what I'm sort of hearing what you say is that because there are choice schools that are proximate to Inglewood, that encourages parents to choose differently than Inglewood? Is
That has happened at Inglewood. We've had a number of parents who've left Inglewood to go to other choice schools in the area.
And it's a zone school now, right?
Yes, it is. So the answer might be to repurpose Inglewood, but it's premature. It's too
Right.
early to say that, and we've got.
But it would be, if you were thinking about a Padea or a path to Stratford,
Yeah.
it could be one of those.
It could be.
So
yes.
in other words, when you're looking at these schools, it may not be closure, it could be, there are other options.
Or transition to a charter school.
Right. Because I think that's a lot of the anxiety that we're hearing from parents, is that all this uncertainty breeds uncertainty.
But when you look at the map, and when you ride the streets, you get a better perception of how close together some of these schools are, and how small the school districts are. the zones. And so, so there could be consolidation that could work. 27 schools in an area this small with a 2,000 or 3,000 excess seats is not effective.
Right.
Can you say how this would affect a school like Meg's, which draws kids in from all over the county?
Yeah,
Or would that change it?
no effect on Meg's. It is a no zone lottery school, academic criteria to get in, and those criteria won't change.
Are we looking at the right things when we evaluate whether a school is effective? Should we be looking at other things?
I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see it or not, but we have a much broader analysis than just the state report card or the state priority list, much broader. It's called our Academic Performance Framework, and it measures a number of additional criteria beyond just achievement scores. The priority list is determined primarily by achievement scores. It does not factor in growth. Value add is not factored into priority. On our academic performance framework, it is. I'll give you an example of one that is still in the bottom 5%, not in this zone, but in another zone, Napier Elementary. Napier Elementary 4 years ago, I think, was perhaps the lowest performing elementary school in the state. To come out of being the lowest performing school in the state and get above the 5% is a big change in a 3-year period of time. Napier's made progress. It's still in the bottom 5%. And so what we want to do is we want to look at value added. We want to look at the trends. Is a school getting better? Are the students achieving at more than a year's worth of growth? That's one big factor in a decision that we would make, and it's on our academic performance framework. What's the attendance rate at schools? If we have very high chronic absenteeism, that's a problem. That might speak to leadership. If we have an elementary school with a high percentage of kids that are chronically absent, then what has the school been doing about that? We need to look at that. So there are a number of other factors that go into our academic performance framework beyond just achievement scores. That some of that data is still being plugged into the framework now, and that data will be finished within 2 weeks, and we'll use the academic performance framework to help us make these decisions. More data still to come in.
Dr. Register, can you share, you had mentioned bringing in some consultants potentially to help with some of these schools. Am I accurate in saying that? Have you used consultants like this before, and who might that be? What would you do?
Well, I'd rather not call names, but we're looking at. I'm actually working with Shannon Hunn at the Nashville Public Education Foundation. She's got contacts. I have contacts, and we're looking at people or organizations who specialize in turnaround work, not pro or con charter organizations. It's not that, but turnaround specialists, and we're looking at some of those people who can help us. We're a member of the Council of Great City Schools. There are possibilities there, but we're really looking more for consultants that can add to our capacity to develop turnaround strategies. We're looking at people to help us with transportation. We're looking at people that can help us with zoning and issues like that.
In your other turnaround scenarios, or hadn't used consultants this way before?
I have used consultants this way in another district.
Mr. Pinkston says in his letter that the district spent $3.5 million to engage the tribal group for district turnaround strategy that you never shared with the board. Is that accurate? Is that a different kind of?
No, that's not accurate. We got out of the tribal contract really what we were expecting to get. Tribal was primarily an effort to help individual schools develop internally to develop a turnaround strategy that's personalized to each school. We had a 3-year contract with Tribal, and we ended it after 2 years because we felt like we got out of Tribal the value of what we were doing there. They also gave, at my request, gave us some advice on how to organize and reorganize the district to better provide effective administration for running urban school systems. An outshoot of that was the lead principal network that we are implementing now in our district. 2 of the principals from Tribal, the managers of the organization, left. And left during the course of the engagement here. And after 2 years, we felt like we had invested actually, I think it might have been 3 years, but we had gotten from them what we could get, and we just had a clause where we could end the contract before a 3rd year. But we feel like we got something, and those reports were this thick on individual schools, and they have been made available in the past to the board.
In July, you said enough is enough. Do you feel like you're making progress in seeing that enough is enough?
Yeah, I think I used an analogy, but let me say this: we are going to have 25 charter schools in our district. They're public schools. We're serving the same children. And we're serving all children in public schools in the district. And part of that, a big segment of that's going to be 25 charter schools. I can't ignore them, nor should I be in an adversarial relationship with them. Does that mean we're going to agree all the time? No. Does it mean that we're going to wholesale convert to charter schools in this district? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that we have 25 schools, and from my perspective, that's a big percentage of the schools. And we need to form a working relationship. And I feel very good about that, frankly. Mm-hmm. We had our 3rd meeting last night with a identified group, Justin Testerman and our co-chair of that group, and about half charter leaders and half district leaders. And this was the opportunity for me to talk about this plan and to roll it out. I'm also communicating with Chris Barbick. I didn't like the way they took Brick Church Middle, and we've talked through that, and now we're collaborating. And I think that we will make better decisions, and what's most important is that we make good decisions for children in public schools in Davidson County, and that we work closely together. Can't ignore them. And I think that we can together make decisions that can serve us well. This East Nashville strategy can be a perfect example. This is a heavy lift. Mm-hmm. It's a heavy lift to talk about what we're doing in East Nashville, and it might work, and we might say, no, we can't do that. We can't go that far. Or it might take us 2 years or 3 years to go that far. We don't know that yet, but I'll tell you, we'll make a lot better decision with the charter providers at the table and being willing to participate in helping us provide that, rather than trying to do it in isolation of the charter providers.
So you've made progress in that conversation, and
right.
How do you feel about the community rhetoric as we see after that conversation? Clearly, we have some
after
letters
Tuesday
coming
night.
in.
Yeah. Well, I welcome that because this matter needs to be an urgent matter in our community. You know, I want to make sure that the principals in our district and the teachers in our district that are in low-performing schools realize the urgency. I started with a general staff meeting a week ago, and I welcome a recognition in the community of the urgency of this issue. If we're going to not have any priority schools in 3 years, we've got to get busy.
So another way to say it, do you feel like the criticism that you're hearing is constructive criticism, or is it carping?
I'll take it as constructive criticism.
Okay. Well, that
Some of it's, I'm sure, is carping, but I'll take it as constructive criticism. I will
is the
listen to it.
21st century.
I will listen to it.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Register, for coming in. Thank you, editorial board, for participating, and thank you, audience, for watching. And we'll be back here on Monday with Mayor Carl Dean. Take care.